So it's October 27th, 2015, speaking with well-known attorney, famous author Philip Howard in New York City. So, Philip, tell us what your passion is outside of the practice of law.
Well, I like living, so I have many passions, but the one I spend the most time on is studying the effects of legal structures on human behavior and writing books about it, and then trying to organize coalitions to change and fix our crazy system of government.
Excellent. Give me an example of one of the entities. What is this about common good, for instance?
Well, I started a not-for-profit in 2002 called Common Good, and it's a not-for-profit vehicle to do this. But our most recent initiative has been to look at the cost of unintended delays in red tape when people are trying to get approvals for new infrastructure projects, to rebuild bridges or build new power lines, that sort of thing. And what we found is that the red tape had ballooned to the point where major projects could take a decade or longer. And this had the effect of more than doubling the cost of projects. And it also had the effect of being dramatically harmful for the environment. So it's quite ironic that environmental review, when it becomes very lengthy, is actually harmful because it prolongs all the bottlenecks that cause pollution. So one thing we discovered was that the archaic power grid wastes an amount of electricity that's the equivalent of 200 coal-burning power plants. So because we haven't gotten the approvals to replace the archaic power grid, we might as well have 200 more coal-burning power plants. Well, that's absurd. So we're building a coalition. We have a proposal before Congress as we speak to fix this that would dramatically shorten the time for permitting of infrastructure and environmental review. And it would, even in the most complex projects, wouldn't take more than 2 years instead of 10 or 15 years.
I know with one of your books, the first one that I ran across was The Death of Common Sense, and enjoyed it immensely. What comments do you have about the medical liability system?
Well, the medical liability system is extraordinarily counterproductive, because when you allow any sick person who gets sicker to blame a doctor or to sue a doctor, whether or not the doctor or hospital did anything wrong, what happens is you end up changing the behavior of doctors. Doctors practice defensive medicine, which is very hard to measure, but probably costs the country $100 to $200 billion a year. Just to put a number on that, that's $1,000 to $2,000 for every American family that's wasted because doctors are ordering tests that aren't needed because they feel they must do something just in case they're sued. So that's one cost. The second cost is the studies show that this defensiveness has created a culture of secrecy and a lack of transparency, so that doctors are actually trained, and nurses too, not to speak up if they see something in their peripheral vision that might be wrong, because they don't want to take legal responsibility for someone else's patients. So when you're dealing with something as complex as healthcare, you need everybody involved in the system to be alert at all times, and if something seems a little odd, to say, are you sure that's the right dosage? Or has somebody taking care of this person who looks like they're in distress? Instead, we have a culture where people are trained to wear blinders, and it causes mistakes, and it causes real people to try to cover up problems instead of disclose them and say, how do we learn from these problems and such. So it's just and it makes it horrible for doctors. You know, it's just for physicians to go through the day constantly listening to a little lawyer on their shoulder saying, might this go wrong in this way? Might this person sue? You know, I had a kind of an in-law who was a pediatrician in North Carolina, and he said to me at some point, he said, well, you know, I'm not candid with people anymore because you got to watch your words. You wouldn't want to say something that might be used against you. Well, that's terrible. These are healing professionals, and the patients can feel that. Patients can feel it when the doctor is kind of, you know, playing his cards close to his chest, vest and stuff. So it's just, you know, having a sue for anything system for healthcare is bad for everybody.
Thank you. So, how do you get others involved? How do you get people to share your passion and convince them that the system needs to be changed?
Well, I think we haven't figured this out perfectly, and ultimately I think we need a movement to overhaul the American system of law and American system of government. But in general, I think it's very important to present the facts about how these systems are counterproductive, to present the facts about how lengthy environmental review hurts the environment, or how letting doctors be sued for anything ends up hurting the quality of healthcare, you know, and driving up costs. So that's the first goal. The second goal, really equally important, is to present a new vision of how to fix it. And, you know, fixing these problems, it's easy. It's just, you know, take infrastructure. We have a proposal before Congress that's less than 3 pages long. And the proposal is to give authority to the council, to the chairman of the Council on Environmental Equality, which reports to the White House. So it's an environmental official. Give them the authority to say when there's been enough environmental review. Today, review just goes on forever. Whenever anybody says, oh, we better uncover that pebble or we might get sued, or, you know, somebody's complaining about this. Well, sometimes it makes no difference to the project. And anybody with common sense knows it, but no one has authority to say so. So we have this less than 3-page proposal that basically creates clear lines of authority and allows decisions to be made. It has a timetable, and that's the way other countries do it. So it's easy. In the case of healthcare, you have to create a system of justice that's reliable to distinguish between good care and bad care. That's not a jury. Juries don't abide by each other's decisions. Juries are an ad hoc decision makers. So we've proposed creating an expert court system where you had judges with medical training who would have written rulings on standards of care that doctors could see, and have guidelines for how much people got compensated when they were injured, and have something that doctors could actually rely upon so they don't have to look over their shoulder all day long.
So Philip, what else would you like to add into this message to the world about how to improve the world?
Well, I think it's, I think it's very important for people to step back and look at why government works so badly, and why it seems to be broken. It's not because you have a lot of idiots involved. I mean, it's not even, I think, because of partisan politics, although it doesn't help much. It's because we got this idea in our head after the 1960s that we could create systems that were better than human judgment. That if you simply wrote enough rules, everything would work well. Well, in fact, that's just central planning. If only there were enough rights, anybody could complain about anything, then everything would be fair. Well, it turns out that's actually a formula for tyranny. That's letting any That's, creating a society by the lowest common denominator. You can't run a society that way. You have to make judgments about how much risk is reasonable, how much isn't, how much claims are reasonable and such. So we have to restore authority mechanisms that are accountable in order for society to work well. We don't need a 1,000-page rule book for nursing homes. Australia does it with 31 general principles. Have a home-like setting, respect the dignity of the residents. And their nursing homes, after they did that, were twice as good after 1 year. Because instead of going through the day complying with rules, the people in the nursing home actually looked around and say, how am I going to make life nice for Mrs. Jones? And the regulators didn't give up their authority. But now, when there was an argument and they came in, it was an argument over right and wrong, not whether you complied with Rule 536. It was an argument about, is this nice? Is it a home-like setting? And having room for argument is unbelievably important in a free society. That's how we move forward. People have different points of view. I mean, anyone who's married knows that husbands and wives don't agree. In fact, they don't agree all the time. The question is how much they agree. Well, that's true in life too. And there's sort of a dialectic in any complex human activity, running a hospital, a nursing home, a school. And you have to let humans be free to have these discussions and competitions and arguments, and then have a way to resolve the dispute. Somebody's got to be in charge. But we can't create a system where everything works perfectly, where the rule book, all you do is comply and everyone's happy. Because in fact, what that gives us is what we've got now, which is a form of paralysis, governmental paralysis. So we need to radically simplify our system of government, give back authority to judges to draw lines of what's good care and what isn't and such, so that people feel comfortable going through the day, living their lives reasonably instead of just covering their rear end all the time. We're really due for an overhaul. The last time we overhauled the legal structure of society was the 1960s, when we woke up to the abuses of racism and pollution and such. Before that, it was the New Deal, when we needed social safety nets to prevent people from starving. Before that was the progressive era to regulate rapacious corporate owners who were abusing child labor and such. Before that was the Civil War, finally got rid of slavery. Well, we're due for one of those. And I think the movement to create it ought to be one that's focused on putting humans in charge again, letting people be free, including the people in the White House and the people in the schoolhouse, letting be free to use their judgment, to have disagreements, have a way of resolving them, but let people use their common sense. Don't tell us what to do. Don't threaten us with lawsuits all the time. Have mechanisms in place in society so that people can look forward in their day instead of looking over their shoulders.
Thank you very much, Philip.
This is the center of legal reform in America, so it's a very important forum and has been a leader for more years than I've been involved in it. This panel is about what the law has done to health care, and it's been quite a year for health care liability debates. The system driving it is the fact that health care in America is melting down. For reasons that Don Palmisano will be more eloquent than anyone could be, the effects on physicians have been devastating, driving many out of the business altogether.